now. Go ahead and let people in. All right, and here we go.
All right.
All right, welcome everybody to another adventure in the Frightmare Before Christmas series. Today we have Steve and Samson. And if everybody in the attending in the audience, please keep your mics muted and your videos off. It just keeps down confusion. If you use the chat box for any questions and comments, I will relay them to Steve unless he happens to be monitoring it too. And then he can, of course, chime in when he's ready. So Steve is the author of horror and dark fiction, fantasy short stories. Many of them appear in numerous anthologies. He's the author of 3 novels, Bone Eater King and Marrow Dust, which are part of the Predator World series. His forthcoming book, Mark of the WITCHWYRM, will be out towards the end of January. We have, he's a staff writer for Rough House Publishing. He's the co-host on the Retro Ridoctopus podcast. I hope I said that correctly.
Good job, Chris. Good job.
Well, when he's not writing novels, he's writing and recording classic heavy metal music with his band Enchanted Exile. We do have his music in the store, and the way I describe it is if the symphonic metal band Camelot and the heavy metal band Judas Priest had a baby, you would have Enchanted Exile. So Steve, welcome to A Frightmare Before Christmas.
Thanks a lot, Chris. And I actually I kind of dig that description. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah. Actually, I can't turn the camera around, but I have a signed Camelot poster on the wall. I crap you not.
I believe you.
Yeah.
So it's all you.
Thanks for having me, man.
You're welcome. So we can go start. You wanted to start by reading from your novel?
Yeah, I definitely want to do a little bit of reading. So I have. Can we talk about the book real quick, though?
Yep. Talk away.
Kind of get
your
into
show.
It. So this new bad boy, which I can't hold up because it hasn't been printed yet. So this is my 3rd novel. It's called Mark of the WITCHWYRM, and it is my first time delving into the world of dark fantasy, grimdark. Just a little, it's adjacent to horror, which I've, written in almost exclusively now. And it's a story that has been in me for a while. It took me quite a while to finish the book, but the stories have been in me for quite a while. And it is basically, if I was to encapsulate it, and what makes this story different than other quote unquote like epic fantasies that you've read. This is more like a low fantasy. This is dark fantasy. There's horror in it. There is a big freaking monster. There's actually a couple monsters in this book. I'm a big monster guy. There's pretty much monsters in all my stuff. So that's like, if there was any common thread, it's going to be that. But I wanted to do something a little bit different. My first 2 books are they're vampires in Africa. That's like the real quick 3-word synopsis of Predator World, and this is just very different. I created my own world, but unlike a lot of big epic fantasy, this is not like really about saving the world or saving a kingdom or anything like that. I wanted to do something that was smaller. And I wanted to do something that was more personal to the characters, and hopefully something that the audience would be able to get really, really involved with. So I'm a father. I have 2 girls, and I wanted to write a epic type fantasy, low fantasy, whatever is what I say, but like a fantasy world. This is fake stuff, monsters, creatures, whatever. But it's really about a father trying to save his son. And it starts out, and I'm actually going to read the opening chapter. I've been on a few podcasts and such, and I've read from various passages, and I haven't actually read the first chapter. So tonight I'm just gonna debut the first chapter for you guys. And the thing is, with any novel, reading an excerpt is just weird because there's just no context, and a a lot of times, if you do what I'm about to do and you read from the beginning, that's just the beginning. You're getting an intro, but there's no action yet and stuff. So, but that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna try that out and see what you guys think, and hopefully, if it's interesting, you'll stick with it. But this character that we are going to meet is at the end of a journey already. So this is almost like, with the original Star Wars trilogy, where, yeah, sure, there was episodes 1, 2, and 3 allegedly, so says Lucas, whatever. But like, we're going to tell the end of the story because that's what he wanted to do. And so that's what I kind of did as well. So at the point where we meet this main character, he has been on the road on his horse for about 19 weeks. And so about 5 months. And he has been searching for something. And as we will learn, I don't remember how much exactly is given away in the first chapter. So like, we're gonna have my head spinning. Like, I'm still recording the audiobook for this, which I've been doing almost exclusively for like 2 months, and I've never done that before. That's all new. So I don't know. My head's like kind of spinning, but we'll go back to chapter 1. But I don't know how much I give away in this, but he's looking for something, and it's to save his son, because in the world, I'll start reading, and maybe we'll talk about it later. So let's just dive in. We'll just do that. So we have chapter 1:1, because I just labeled everything like video games because I love video games. So this is 1-1. All right, folks. So here we go. It's 1-1 of Mark of the Witchworm. First, I want it to be cool, like Matt Bechtel, and have a cool drink. So he had like some cool like scotch or whiskey in a cool glass, and he looked all cool with his hat. I don't actually look good in hats, so I just went with au naturel, and I have a Bloody Moon Night right here. There's a Bloody Mary and a Moon Night glass for you guys. So let me just take a sip of that. Not bad. All right, here we go. Flakes of white drifted down and down between leafless branches, frosting all with sleepy indifference. So this is snow. To the man upon the long-legged horse, the exotic precipitation weaved a kind of magic. He was a stranger to these cold northern woods, a traveler from a region where the daring speared and hauled slime-slick beasts onto damp-waiting banks. Before now, snow had existed solely in tales, the sort of thing that might pass between travelers on their way from one somewhere to the next. But in this foreign place, those tales at least were manifest. Feeling a burgeoning shiver at the base of his spine, the rider turned away from a gust of wind. Circling his head was a leathern band with several burnished medallions. This held in place a special headscarf known as a haresh by those of his craft. The garment was black as the man's hair, with long tattered tassels that flapped and whipped in the breeze behind. There was also a collar which lent the bearings of a rogue. It was turned up and large enough to hide a strong nose, harsh jaw, and almost omnipresent frown. Of the man's face, all that could be seen were a pair of eyes which glared with the fatigue of 19 long weeks. They were gray, those eyes, determined and full of storms. Rander Belmorn was an imposing man with a prodigious weight upon his sun-beaten brow. He was descended from a proud nomadic tribe who'd once hunted enormous elk in the shadow of the Karagash Ridge. Almost 2 centuries ago, those copper-skinned people were forced to abandon their plains for a new home, settling at last upon the banks of a massive uncrossable river, a brackish body of water which not only bisected the continent, but teemed with the sort of prey most were too afraid to hunt. Taming the gigantic horses they found there, these people carved out a new existence, not as hunters or fishermen, but something in between. Rander Belmorn was a man of the river, what some called a Blackfoot, and he was far, far from home. Snap! A crisp rending of twig pulled the man's attention. He glared between trees that were taller and more dense than he had ever known possible. But beyond the snow-dusted trunks, Belmorn saw nothing, no beast or villain to hinder his progress, and so he relaxed, settling back into the rocking movement of his horse. After a long, quiet moment, the stallion shook its head, causing the bridle to whip and jingle. Like all of its breed, the animal was immense, as big as any draft horse but longer of leg. Its coat was nearly black, the color of rain-kissed soil, except the legs, which looked to have been painted of pure alabaster. Where the two opposing hues met, light attacked dark in the manner of bold horizontal stripes. An adamandre would be an exotic sight in all lands save the Black River region, where it had dropped so unceremoniously to the ground. Though he was much younger then, Belmorn could still recall the sight of that ungainly foal blinking up at him, wondering what in the world had just happened. It has been said that against its will, an adamandre is harder to move than the tallest oak. Yet for the past 19 weeks, the stallion served his oldest friend well, bearing the man down roads of stone and pressed earth, past villages, cities, and markets where men swallowing flaming swords, where men swallowed flaming swords or shouted their wares. Magnus was the horse's given name, even if it was seldom used anymore. Sorry, old man. The Blackfoot spoke with a dry rasp in his vocal cords, not yet accustomed to the climate. Drifted away there for a second. Belmorn patted the horse's neck, and for a fleeting second, he considered glancing behind, south, back over the travel and toil of 19 weeks, all the way back home to a small riverside village called Grail. I bet you're hungry. The horse coughed up a cloud, flapping its long black mane. After coming to a stop, Belmorn swung a leg over the saddle horn and dismounted. Thumb and forefinger worked at the collar button until the flaps of leather parted. With his face now woefully exposed, a sudden shiver racked the man. He had never worn a beard before, nor had his hair ever come so near his shoulders. Such trappings were burdens to men who pulled enormous eels and worse out of the black southern rivers. Sorry, I guess I have a Facebook. Go away, Facebook. You're embarrassing me in front of all the people. Okay. Excuse me. As he scratched the obscured line of his chin, Belmorn's mind yearned to wander again, to slip backwards along that road. What would Malia think if she could see him now? Would she fancy this leaner, hairier, more hollow-eyed version of her husband? Belmorn frowned, suddenly feeling very cold. His gaze fell to the flakes gathering on the black fur of his cloak. The bear pelt was a recent acquisition, purchased from an 8-fingered merchant in Brittlepore. Only a few weeks back, he had scoffed at the idea of spending good coin on anything that could not be digested, but now, as the hairs of that cloak collected more and more snow, he regretted not spending a little more on something with a hood. The adamandre whickered impatiently, nudging the rider back into the moment. With something like a smile, Belmorn slid his hand down the animal's neck to a small satchel. A potent aroma asserted itself as he extracted 3 pale stalks, each terminating in a conspicuous white bulb. He had been carrying the leeks for 3 days and nights, ever since discovering them growing on the side of the road. The musky bouquet caused a pang to twist in the man's gut. Gripping one of the leeks between his teeth, he snapped the stalk in two. Keeping the white half for himself, he fed the greens to Magnus. Sorry there isn't something better. After watching the stalks disappear, he patted the animal's neck. Don't worry, old man. We'll find more soon. The city can't be far now. Belmorn chewed his final bite slowly, imagining the leek was a bit of roasted eel fillet with dill gravy. The beautiful musing caused the man's stomach to twist and complain. He couldn't help but lament finishing the last strips of dried rabbit 2 days earlier. It had tasted good enough, but with the meat gone, these pale stalks were among his most prized possessions. If he was wrong about being able to find more food, and soon, both horse and rider were going to be in a bad way. No, it wouldn't come to that. They just had to reach the city. Magnus's ear twitched and rotated. Without warning, the stallion coughed up a puff of steam and a series of nervous grunts. Something was in the air, something subtle but steadily gathering above the snow. Belmorn could feel it too, and so they both stood as statues, just listening. To the man's surprise, he could hear the snow as it fell around him. But there was another sound, an undersound. Birds, Belmorn thought. His gaze shot to the path and then straight through the trees. The sky flashed bright white, and rumblings of thunder weren't far behind. Steady, old man. said Belmorn, reassuring his friend with a firm pat on the neck. Steady. Just a little lightning, that's all. Usually it follows the rain. Why not this? Again, Belmorn found himself staring between the trees to the right of his path. The echoes of thunder were gone, but he could still hear the other sound, the birds. Crows, he muttered. They sound mad, frenzied. There was something about the cawing racket that seemed important, but what? The man's mind tried to produce an answer, but it felt frozen and slow. Then, just as a new pang of hunger pulsed in his gut, Belmorn remembered something. Crows, he said with sudden understanding. Crows scavenge. Hanging from one side of the saddle were a series of sturdy iron rings, all square, all mounted to a long leather strap. Stepping into the first of these, Belmorn leapt back into his saddle, shifting his legs almost imperceptibly. Blackfoot clicked his tongue, which spurred the beast into a gallop. In a veritable blur, the trees of the forest rushed past. The tall, branchless things were not especially tightly packed, and moving between them on the back of most horses would be considered idiotic at best, but Magnus was far from most horses. As the pair bounded headlong past brush over fallen trunk, the cawing din grew louder, closer. Sensing this, Belmorn slowed to a trot. There was definitely something up ahead, just through the trees. Whatever was happening there. From such a close proximity, it felt like the chorus of birds were scraping the insides of his skull. Another flash lit the heavens. It was brighter than before, and a peal of thunder was directly behind. The lightning was getting closer. But what did that mean for a snowstorm? Belmorn didn't know, and he didn't care. Nothing mattered beyond the prospect of having something in his stomach besides onions and day-old bile. Fluidly, the Blackfoot slid from the saddle to the ground. Then, keeping his eyes on the clearing, he led the Adamandre over to a tree, looping the reins around its trunk. At this, Magnus gave an angry snort. I'm just having a look. This. He pulled the reins taut so the horse could see. This knot is not my best work, okay? You understand? The horse chuffed, regarding the clearing with one bulging eye. Listen, I don't know what's in there. If things go bad, you'll hear. You'll know. Belmorn gave a small tug so the horse could see the looseness of the knot. If that happens, don't come after me, okay? Just break this and go. The horse stamped a rear hoof on the forest floor and received a reassuring pat on the shoulder. The Blackfoot's hand slid then to the first of a pair of axes mounted to his saddle. Gripping the handles, he pulled them free, turning them in the palms until the blades faced the ground. Oh, stop worrying. Remember, Rin is with us. Belmorn turned toward the squawking cacophony. Stealth would be a wasted effort, he knew. As he stalked towards the noise, his fingers tightened around the two axe handles. Like the man who held them, the axes were Grailian, each supporting a massive wedge-shaped head. These tapered down to a keen crescent edge, which spoke more of scythes than axes. The weight of the weapons felt good in his hands, powerful, and more. They felt a lot like home. The sensation hit him so hard he could almost smell the riverland of his birth, and the raging waters dark, brackish, and full of fury. All right, that's 1-1, guys. That actually went pretty quick, so I don't know if you want to chat about that, Chris, or whatever. I guess I could read the second chapter. It's kind of not as long as I thought it was.
It's up to you. We did have one comment from Facebook Live. A friend of mine, Matt, says, is it wrong to say I'm playing World of Warcraft while listening and they go so well together?
Nice.
Is that, you had mentioned that you, something about old video games and stuff. Are you a gamer?
Yes. I'm a gamer, though these days. I don't get to play too many like modern games. I'm still actually going through Red Dead Redemption 2, which I'm probably going to just be playing for the rest of my life. I don't know. Like I don't have time. So I love video games. I love classic games. I'm a big, like, on the podcast, we talk a lot about classic games. So like a lot of old Nintendo and Super Nintendo and that kind of stuff.
Let's say I'm looking at your website now for the Retro Ridoctopus, and you can see your octopus there on your microphone. That a lot of the pictures for each individual podcast are I don't know what the term is, pixelated or whatever, but it looks like the old 80s style, like Atari, Nintendo, Nintendo games.
Yeah, pixel art is an accepted term. Sprite sprite art as well. I love doing that kind of stuff.
So it's retro-ridoctopus, RID octopus
Yeah.
pinecast.co is the
Yeah,
website. Check it out. These are great podcasts.
We're everywhere. Yeah, you can find us on Facebook and just Google. It's basically the joke was that if back in like the mid 2000s, everybody was saying redunculous. Oh, that's redunculous. It's like the worst version of ridiculous. It's redunculous. So we're like, oh, well, what's worse than redunculous? Ridoctopus.
What's your favorite 80s game?
My favorite Ease game. It's actually there's one of the other hosts is the big Ease fan. I've never played an Ease game. I'm just gonna say Wanderers from Ease because that's the name that popped into my head. I think that was the Super Nintendo one.
Okay, all right.
No.
Yeah, mine was more Atari, but then games on the Commodore 64. That's how far back I go.
Nice.
So
I see Tim Baird. Contra, yeah, Contra.
Yep.
Super C, man.
And there was a couple other comments too about your drink of choice. Facebook, Greg Carcione says chalky milk with ice. And I believe Matt Bechtel said something way back here. You're still cool. Cheers. So.
Thanks, Matt.
So did you want to read a second chapter or just kind of continue with the question with the discussion? Or?
I can read one more chapter. I saw Tim ask a question. He asked if I could just give a 1-minute description of the world where my story takes place in. And Tim's an awesome dude. We met on the con scene. He's a writer of fine dragon-based epic fantasy, so it's cool to see him here. And just so you know, Tim, there is a dragon-like monster in this book. Mark of the Witchworm is describing. No problem, dude. Mark of the Witchworm is describing the titular monster, the Witchworm, and I actually do have an image. Let me just share this with you. So I also draw sometimes. So this is a little bit of what I could come up with here. So this is basically like a dragonish sort of thing, but like with the head of a snake, and then it has a scorpion tail. And I don't know how well you can see it, but there you go. There you go. I don't know. I'm just gonna go on faith that it's not out of focus. I have no idea.
No, it looks good. It looks good.
There we go.
Kind of a dragon meets a cobra.
Dragon cobra, a cobragon? No, it's a witch dragon. So, but the neat thing about this creature, I will describe the world in 1 second, Tim. I'll just get around to it. We got 90 minutes. Like, what am I rushing for? So, this thing, what it does is it's called a witchworm because it has like witchcraft, sort of. It has unexplainable talents, and if it has 2 types of venom in its body, and if you get bitten and stung at the same time, they interact in such a way that it actually can transport you into some other place. And I call it the without. Here we're within, and it's the without. It's just an unknowable dimension. It's this little pocket dimension, and I like looking at biology whenever I'm creating a creature, for sure, always, and try to find some real world counterpart, or even if it's just for behavior, or if it's for figuring out like the food web, or okay, this thing, but what preys on it, what does it eat, that kind of thing. So the idea with this 100% is to take a creature that is like kind of like my xenomorph, where it's just too good at being a predator, and it's in this place where there is nothing to check it at all, and so it's hard to kill. It's hard to kill this thing, and it's kind of a smog situation or smaug situation where it's a fire drake. It's like fire drake from the north. What the hell do you do with that? Like, I don't know, you just let it sleep wherever the hell you want, where it wants to. It's kind of like that. You're kind of screwed. So anyway, this thing does what it does with the pocket dimension in the same way that a leopard will pull prey up a tree. It's just basically a way of getting its prey away from anyone else who might want to bite. So that was kind of like the genesis of that idea. So I think I came up with a pretty neat, memorable monster for this, and hopefully, if sounds interesting. There's it's in the book a lot. I make you guys wait until it shows up. It takes a good amount of the book before it shows up, and then it's just in it almost for the rest of the entire book. So it's a big grueling process to slay this particular dragon. As far as the world, it's definitely less sorcerers and more alchemy. There's not a lot of magic. That really is it. What the witchworm does that's unexplainable is a pretty good example of the magic in my world. So there is no quote unquote magic system. Humans don't do it whatsoever. I mean, they do it. I mean, we all do it, but they don't do magic. I mean, sometimes it's magical, but anyway. So yeah, but the monsters, they do weird stuff. And the only non-human, like quote unquote race, I don't have elves, I don't have dwarves, but I do have trolls. I decided I wanted like one non-human race, and that was going to be it. And so I sort of looked to like the Swedish, Norwegian classic troll mythology, like if you've seen Troll Hunter, like big noses. But these are definitely different. They're, I took that's where I got the basic idea. And I like to play on, Tim's asking, cool is the dragon, sapient, sentient, etc. The witchworm is not sentient. It can move on 2 or 4 legs, but it's a big reptile. So it's a big reptile. But as far as the trolls go, they do also have an unexplainable, could be magic power. I like to think of magic in this world as just biology we don't understand really. That's basically a good idea. There's also, okay, I'll say this too. So you do have characters with swords and axes and such. There's also the early like flintlock pistols. So there are scenes with black powder pistols. One single shot sort of deals. They don't really factor in too much, but I put them in there because I sort of like that idea that it's a little bit more advanced. We're getting towards this different age maybe in this world. And I'm a big fan of Robert E. Howard. So the whole time I'm writing this, I'm not really thinking of like, high fantasy as much as I am sword and sorcery. So on the cover of the book, I say it's a monstrous tale of axes and alchemy. So that's like me just, taking ownership of sword and sorcery. It's just axes because the main character's axes. And let's face it, alliteration is fun, right? So there's also alchemy. But the second to main character that we meet in the next part is something of an alchemist. So yeah, so I mean, if there are no questions per se, I guess I can read one more chapter, 1-2. There's no mini boss quite yet. You eventually get to the mini boss. The big boss is at the end. You wait till you see the final form, you guys. I'm doing all this. See, Chris, what I'm doing here? I'm bringing it all into the video games. That's what I'm doing.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
If you want to read it, or I got some questions too. It's up to you.
Yeah. Oh, Andrew Zaman with the Santa beard. How's it going, man?
How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you. All right. So Tim says, I got to put the Wii one to bed. Oh, well, thanks, Tim. Enjoy. Good luck, sir. Good luck. Eric Nunnally says, what sort of duties do you have as a staff writer for Rough House Publishing, and how long have I been there? So Rough House I've been with for about a year and a half or around 2 years. I got another rapid fire questions from Mr. Eric Nunnally. Blood for the Sun. How's it going, man? No problem. So first question, Rough House Publishing, awesome indie comic publisher. They call themselves like, we say like punk comic publisher. Everything's done with this attitude, and it's just a lot of fun. And I got brought on with them. I guess it's been about 2 years now. So last year I was they resurrected this anthology comic series from the 80s and early 90s called Gore Shriek. And with us, it's Gore Shriek Resurrect Us, because we resurrected it. And yeah, so it's basically like evil Creepshow, like way more evil and way more gruesome than Creepshow, but that kind of an idea where everything has this like Twilight Zone wink, and it's all just, you know, different artists doing each story and stuff. And I had a story in Gore Shriek Resurrect Us Volume 2, which came out last year, and number 3 is actually going to be out next year, because COVID obviously changed stuff for everybody. And we were originally going to have it out this year, and that just did not happen. So Gore Shriek Resurrect Us is going to come out next year. So I actually have got to do a couple of stories with that. And so far it's been working with the comics. And then this sort of came about, like, you know, they had never done a novel before, and they were looking to get into it. And I said, well, I do have this novel that I'm almost done with. And you know, it's you know, so far Rough House tends to do just purely splatterpunk, kind of really extra gory horror. And yeah, COVID-19 is a fucking drag, says Eric. Yeah, hell yeah. And I'll drink some Bloody Moon Night to that, my friend. Spicy meatball. But they're really, like, you know, splatterpunk stuff. And this book is not splatterpunk. I mean, this is dark fantasy, you know, definitely horror elements. So I wasn't 100% sure it was going to be the right fit. And, you know, we talked about it and felt like it was adjacent, and it was a good direction to move in, and hopefully people dig it and stuff. So yeah, I get to be the first novel for Rough House. So this is actually a new division, Rough House Pulp. And this is very pulpy. I've always said that my stuff is like pulp, you know, because as much as I love horror or dark fantasy or sci-fi, or, you know, I love horror Westerns too. I've written some short horror Westerns, and whatever it is, like, it's that pulpy sort of adventure kind of thing going on. So like that's always been a big favorite buzzword for me. Dark pulp is the best. This is dark pulp, man. This right here is dark pulp. WITCHWYRM, that's for sure.
You want to give out where the link is?
What's that? So if you guys, at any point, I'll drop this link a few times. Roughhousepublishing.com, Mark of the WITCHWYRM. Right now you can pre-buy it. There are various versions up there. There's paperback, there is a hardcover there's an alternate cover. If you get the hardcover, you get the alternate cover. And there's like all sorts of fun stuff that go with the higher tiered versions. Or we have like an enamel pin or 2-sided poster. And also you get, there's a version that you can get everything. So it comes with the audiobook, which I'm still working on right now. I'm almost done recording the audiobook. That has been a journey and a half, producing it myself, I should say. Not publishing, producing it myself. I do produce our podcast. I produced our band years ago and stuff. So like I have some experience. So it's just kind of like, you know, let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can pull this off. So what I'm doing tonight, I'm sort of doing like the vanilla version of it. In the actual audiobook, I'm doing like all the voices and all the accents and all that stuff. And I'm just a little too nervous to pull it off in front of you guys. So you guys are just getting vanilla tonight, but you know, hopefully you'll enjoy it anyway. But
yeah, we'll definitely touch on the audiobook portion of it in a little while. So what came first, the podcast, the staff writer, the writing, the music, or did it all sort of happen at the same time?
It did not happen at the same time. For sure, music was first. Podcast kind of grew out of that, and hey, it's Schmales. Looking forward to listening. Yeah, man. Rob Schmales. He's like my best friend. Hey, Rob. Andrew, you're my best friend too, though. Don't worry about it. Everybody's my best friend. And so anyway, yeah, kind of just about like, hey Rob, how's it going, man? Yeah, so so the question was what came first? The chicken. No, the podcasting came out of, you know, basically the band is the podcast. So it's my very, very good friends, that brothers from another mother, and from my actual mother, because one of them is actually my brother Tim. but also Greg Carcione, who I believe is in here, and Nintendo 25, Mr. Joe Dunbar, who's got a really super fun Nintendo themed YouTube channel. So a little plug for him as well. And we just love doing stuff, creating various shit together. We have since the 90s basically. So it went band. We tried to be a band first, and then we're like, oh, let's do a podcast. So we're in the podcast proper season 2. We did about 3 years of just kind of messing around with it, getting kind of the feel of it right. And we have some videos on YouTube on the Boss Rush Mode channel. And we have, I think there's about 8 or so episodes there. And now we have about 60 of the podcast proper. And like I said, it's just basically nostalgia type stuff. We say, we celebrate all the things that made growing up awesome. So that could be movies, TV shows, video games, toys. We do a lot of toy episodes. We do snacks. We did cereal. And every once in a while we do interviews, like every once in a while. Usually it's people I know have something to promote. We had Kat Scully on to talk about Jennifer Strange. That was really, really fun. And every time we do an interview, we always try to like reel in some retro topic as well. So like Kat Scully, we ended up talking a lot of Evil Dead because she's just a big Evil Dead fan. So that was pretty fun. And I know she's coming on the Frightmare, right? She'll
be on Wednesday, so I'll have to remember that.
Very cool, yeah.
So your band is more just a studio band. You haven't done any touring or anything like that, have you?
Yeah, and it's kind of fallen by the wayside, if I'm being honest. We had a third album like half done, and we just sort of it's like there's only so much time in life, and and you can't spend 100% of your free time doing your creating stuff too. I mean, you actually have to have like downtime. And, for those of us who have like, significant others and children and stuff, like we actually have to, spend time with them too. So like, there's only so much you can really do.
Right.
And, luckily, no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, no, at the top, I had mentioned that the way because we have your music, your 2 CDs in the store. I look at it as the symphonic metal band Camelot and mixed with Judas Priest. Does that music? Well, you mentioned the description I have on our website for your music page. Your influences are Dio, Judas Priest, Alice Cooper, Symphonic X, other classic heavy metals, and some symphonic bands. Did that a lot of prog metal? Did that influence your writing? Did that work its way? Because especially Dio, you look at the music videos, has a lot of dark themed sort of otherworldly images and stuff. Did that work its way? Is that kind of how what worked its way into to especially WITCHWYRM?
Yeah, it's literally the same wheelhouse as far as interests go for me. It's my shit. As far as Dio goes, I mean, this is a man who used to, God rest his soul, like Ronnie James. It's been like 10 years or something. I don't know. He's been gone for a while. Love Ronnie James. But yeah, so this guy was like, 5'2", and he used to tour with an actual like 2-story dragon that he would like slay every night on stage back in the 80s, back when you had a budget for heavy metal because it made money. This is my shit. It's always been my shit. And I always liked the dark fantasy. So I keep looking up because I have a Dio Dream Evil poster up on my wall right there that you guys cannot see, which is a bummer because it's pretty sweet. But anyway, so the cover of Dream Evil is like this really amazing cover. It's got this little girl. She's sleeping in bed and she's very safe and comfortable, and she's sucking her thumb, and there is just all manner of oogie boogies all around her. There is just the Dio mascot Murray is peeking through the window, giving the cross horns, which is like 70% cooler than, oh my God. See, you'd think I was Italian for all the hand talking I do, but I was going to say that like the cross horns, that's like 70% cooler than just the single. But anyway, so there's like all sorts of evil clowns and tentacles coming out of the bed, and there's just a skull sitting there. I'm not sure how that, something else must have brought the skull, I think, but spiders and such. And it's just bad news going on in that bedroom, but she just doesn't know. She's just sleeping away. It's just a great juxtaposition. It's awesome dark fantasy cover, and it is pretty much everything I've always loved. So dark stuff, monsters, that's why they're in everything that I write.
Heavy metal music, it all goes together.
And heavy metal music, absolutely. and in fact, now that we're so I don't get to talk about the band anymore. I don't ever bring it up really, but because it's in your store, that's pretty fun. So there actually is some Enchanted Exile in the audiobook to Mark of the Witchworm, because we had a song that we did actually write about the story, because I would always write. So I'm the singer, and I would always write the lyrics. And I was like, well, I'm working on this book. I'm writing a song about it, whatever. So we already had the song, and not sure when it's going to be released. We're not sure, whatever. And then the idea of the audiobook kind of came along, and it's like, oh, well, that was a must. That was like 100%. We are using this song. So there's going to be interstitial parts, like, at the end of a chapter and beginning of a new chapter. You'll hear that a lot with audiobooks. They'll do stuff like that. And the idea is to kind of hear parts of it as it goes, and so it's kind of fun. It was really fun being able to work some of the music into that.
Do you listen to music while you're writing? We have some who put music. In fact, we had one who puts heavy metal music on while he's writing in the background. Others, they can't. They have to have complete silence.
Complete silence. I can't do it. I can't even do it if other people are like in the other room watching TV.
So you have to have complete silence?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know what it is.
If you get to a point where you get stuck, do you kind of step away, throw on some music, some heavy metal to maybe get things moving again, or?
Yeah, usually it's more like the next day in the car, and I throw on something, and maybe some Blind Guardian, just throwing that out there, or Megadeth, and just like, just kind of let it bleed into the background and just start thinking, okay, what comes next? What's wrong? Why can't I crack this egg? Because I'm a firm believer in, and I know this is like not necessarily what you're supposed to do at all. And I've heard the opposite of what you're supposed to do, like from everybody says, just keep going, just write, just keep going, power through it. It will work. Just keep on going. And for me, I really have a problem doing that. And I always feel like if it's not right, I can't allow myself to go on. I feel like I have to solve whatever the problem is. And with the few times that I've forced myself to go on, I usually only get another chapter or so down the road. And then I realize, no, it's still not right. And it's getting worse. I have to go back, throw all this away, put it in the waste paper basket, put it all away, and then like go fix the original problem that I powered through, because it's just not there yet. And every time that's happened, and then I've had that aha moment, oh my God, that's what I got to do. That is so much better. And then I keep going, and it's no problem. So I know it's just an internal thing. It's just, my own brain, but as a writer, that's just how I have to do it. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why it takes me a little bit longer to complete these novels. So this book is about 100,000 words. So it's the longest I've written, by about like, I think it's about 10,000 words longer than my last one, which was Marrow Dust. But it took me a while, like start to finish. It was about 3 years writing this book. So
Wow.
I'm just, it is what it is. And when it's ready, it's ready. And I hope it's as good as it's ever going to be. And I think that I've sort of come to grips with that fact that I'm not going to be a fast writer, but what I put out there is hopefully going to stick with you, and you're going to enjoy it, and it's going to be, as good as I could have possibly done it, basically.
Well, if anybody wants to listen to songs from both albums, actually, you can go to our website, freethinkerscorner.com, go to music, and then look up Enchanted Exile. We have all the I did. Yep. I have all the links. You can click on each individual album, and you can listen to all the tracks. You can download the tracks. You can download the whole albums if you want. I think they're $1 a piece or $10 for the whole download, something like that. But so you can listen to them that way. Or do you have your music elsewhere to listen to, like on YouTube?
It's on YouTube. Both albums are on YouTube. Both albums are on Google Music and just, I don't know. Oh wait, is Google Music not a thing anymore? Did that tank or something? I think they changed it. I don't know.
I try to stay
you can just find us. If you want to support us, we're on SoundCloud too, or go through Free Thinkers Corner. Either way, that's really fun. Go through Free Thinkers Corner. You guys are here. You guys are only here because of Free Thinkers Corner. I mean, for goodness sakes. But yeah, sure. Camelot meets Judas Priest, according to Chris Upton.
Yeah, the music is very epic, very symphonic. Your voice, it just Rob Halford it was the first thing that, well, maybe plus the bald head.
I don't sing high. It's like I don't.
No, not the high part of it, but I mean, there are definitely some riffs that are like that. But I think your voice just reminded me of Rob Halford.
Thanks.
So,
well, he's a cool dude, so I welcome the comparison, even if I think you're crazy. But yeah, Eric says it's YouTube music now.
Oh, there you go.
Google Music is not a thing anymore.
Okay. Yeah. See, I don't try to keep up with any of this technology and internet stuff. It's just too much for my old brain. So,
dude, you're analog, man. You have a bookstore. It's okay.
I'm analog. I am. So I read that you're a big fan of black and white monster movies.
Yes.
What are your favorite monster movies, and have any of them worked their way or have any influence on your writing?
I like to think they have. I mean, okay. So starting with the Universal, this is a whole episode, by the way. This is what you don't want to ask me about. And then have other things to fit time in. I love Bela Lugosi. I have a weird obsession with Bela Lugosi. I really love him. So Rob Schmales says, have a potato. And he's referencing one of my all-time favorite movies ever. Bela Lugosi's not in it, but Karloff is in it. It's called The Old Dark House. And it's from 1932. And it was directed by James Whale, who directed Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. And it's kind of like one that gets no credit. It's not really considered part of the Universal monster cycle. There isn't really a monster really in it, but I mean, Karloff plays an ugly butler. I wouldn't call him a monster, but great movie, great dark like horror comedy. There's some like people think horror comedies are like a new thing, and oh, get your yeah, I don't know, get your pudding out of my potatoes. I don't know. I couldn't come up with that. That was terrible. But two things that don't go together. Anyway, so yeah, it goes back a long ways. Like horror comedy. I mean, that's a great horror comedy. 1932. Also, there's the Cat and the Canary, which is a silent film, and that was 20s. I don't know if it was. I don't know the exact year, but awesome movie. Funny, dark, weird movie. Cat and the Canary. There are two versions of it. And then there's actually two versions of The Old Dark House. Two movies called The Old Dark House. One was with Bob Hope. You don't want the Bob Hope one. You want the one with Boris Karloff. It's amazing. It's amazing. And there's this whole sequence. And here's like some of the humor in it, just kind of subtle humor. But there's this weird, like really awkward dinner scene because it's basically this old dark house and there's thunderstorms going on outside and like, all these people start showing up and they're like, oh, it's raining out there and we need shelter. And so they keep letting all these travelers in. And then there's just this awkward dinner scene. And they're like, well, we were going to have dinner. So we have roast beef. So why don't you guys all just, again, with the talking, I'm talking too much with my hands. And there's this really funny part with this actor Ernest Thesiger, who actually played Dr. Pretorius in The Bride of Frankenstein, and he just keeps incessantly offering people potatoes, and it's I don't know, I just love it. It literally cracks me up. I laugh out loud. I loll at this man offering potatoes, like, you know, and he starts to use it. Like the first time it's like a legitimate offer. He's like have a potato, and then like later it's when the other guests are just getting too annoying, and he uses it to like shut them up. And so they're like, you know, annoying, loud. He's like, have a potato, and they shut up. And they're like, oh, thank you, I should love a potato. Take one. Anyway, awesome movie. So from there, like there's just a million. I love stuff from the 50s. I love like the sci-fi stuff, all the atomic age. I love them with an exclamation point in the title. Amazing movie. Also very, like, when you watch them, if you've never seen them and you're a fan of James Cameron's Aliens, like there are comparisons to make. That's all I'm saying. There are comparisons. Them is maybe, yes, it is. And them is also a great example of a sound being used as a character, pretty much. I mean, the sound of the ants, because it's giant ants. Just absolutely, your mom would do the tree frogs. Fun fact: it's tree frogs actually making that sound. Awesome movie. Also, like the beast from what is it? I always screw it up. There's like the Phantom from 10,000 Leagues and the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. The Beast from the one with Harryhausen. Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Awesome movie based on a Ray Bradbury story. I believe The Lighthouse. Changed a lot, but awesome stuff. And those two are buddies. And so yeah, I don't know. So I sort of have this like amateur historian thing going on. I just really, you know, when it comes to old black and white horror movies and sci-fi movies, just really good stuff. Really like it. As far as whether or not it influences me, I don't know how much exactly, but I'm definitely influenced by, like I said, like the Robert E. Howard, like pulp from the 30s, for sure. So I love old stuff just in general. It's really great. But the problem with pulp from the 30s is it tends to be kind of racist. So that sucks. So one of the things I always try to do, and I wanted to make sure we got to talk about, but I'm really a proponent of diversity in character. And I really try to have nationalities that you don't usually see as the heroes and as a supporting cast and just everybody. So my first two books were, you know, they take place in Africa. They star Africans. This is not a stranger in a strange world, sort of, oh, like white man's Africa. Oh no, like no. There's like one white guy from South Africa, pretty much. This is just, you know, it's the people who I felt should be in the story. The main character is a Ugandan woman, and there's a Maasai dude, and they're the main characters. So that's that. And then when it came to Witchworm, I was like, well, you know, I want to keep doing this sort of thing. So for those of you who heard my first chapter, I described the character in there, and he is very much an analog of a Native American. And so he is not truly, there's no America, but he's in all but name a Native American. And I wanted to make sure that it was known that they were these, you know, plains people, these hunters, and then they settled on this river, this big black river. And I really wanted to make them a horse culture. And there's just a lot of stuff that I did, you know, use that were real world stuff, like from various tribes and various things. And I call him a Blackfoot, and he isn't of the Blackfoot tribe. They don't actually have tribal names. But he is, that is a colloquialism used to describe the type of hunter he is. And some of this was in that first chapter, but basically, you know, they ride out onto this big, huge, I'm reading Eric's question. I know he asked this already. For the Predator World series, you describe it as occurring in a post-apocalyptic Africa. I can't see the rest of that question. Can you see the rest of that question, Chris?
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look for it. But yeah, I was definitely going to talk about
it like does the dot
those.
dot. I can't read the second half of it.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and keep talking, and I'll look for it.
Eric, are you asking? So you're asking about? Oh, I see. I have the.
What sort of research? Yeah. Well, this was one of my questions coming up. Was what sort of research did you do to set the story in a post-apocalyptic Africa.
Okay, so yeah, back to the first book is Bone Eater King, and most of the research I did is geography, and I watched a lot of videos of just local people. Okay, here's a good example. I wanted so Mark of the Witchworm, everything's made up. Things are like echoing real world, but it's fantasy. This is the real world. This is post-apocalyptic Earth, you know. So the first book takes place in Tanzania. So I'm like, okay, well, so they're in Tanzania, and I know the basic area. So first I figured out Google Earth, you know, Google Maps, basically satellite pictures, help me figure out what's actually there. It's awesome being able to see, you know, because I would have loved to obviously gone there, but I mean, there's actually a Maasai camp that I would die to do, like amazing. Like you can go and just like live with them for a few days, and absolutely awesome. But you know, I can't do that. I don't have such luxuries. I wish I did, but I have Google, so that's handy. And people love to post pictures of their vacation. So a couple things that I got from that were like, all right, I figured out mileage. I'm like, well, I knew that the book was going to be taking place in, now again, this is the Bone Eater King, taking place in a single night. So I said, okay, well, you know, the mileage has to be correct. So if it's only a few hours, how far can they realistically be able to get to go from where to where? I figured out the route. I figured out how, you know, what made sense. And then I sort of informed myself what was actually there. And for both books, I found a lot of really neat, like just actual churches, actual buildings, actual businesses, things that were there. And then this is sort of after everything's destroyed. So I got to, like, you know, put some real world stuff in there. One of the things was there's a subplot. So the Predator World books are like, there's a main story and then there's like the side story, and they're kind of interwoven. And the deal, which I made just part of the whole thing, and I am going to write a third Predator World book. It'll be the same sort of deal. The B segment will seem like it's not connected to the A segment until the end of the B segment, and then you're like, oh, I see what you did. So that's kind of like that idea. And so for the B segment in Bone Eater King, I knew I wanted there to be a building that, like a big industrial sort of a building that got taken over by this group of humans that was able to survive. And because one of the rules in Predator World is that the humans actually are pushed out into the wilderness because the cities get taken over by the vampires. So all the cities, all the buildings just blackened out windows, and they just nest in these any structure at all. So, you know, as a human who survived, you have like a better chance of surviving if you're just out in the wilderness, because you know that the cities are all belong to them. And so there are certain places I said, okay, but certain buildings, there's got to be some humans that were able to take over certain things. And so I was able to find that there's this big GM plant in Kenya. It actually opened up sort of recently, about 20 years ago. And it's the biggest manufacturer of buses for Kenya and Tanzania, and like all sort, like I don't know exactly how far it reaches, but they're like a major bus manufacturer, this particular plant. And so what I was able to do is say, okay, well, now that I know I have this GM plant, let's see if I can find videos of the GM plant. And it turns out there's plenty of videos of the GM plant, because you know why? They were super fucking proud. I swore. I don't know if I can swear. Can I swear, Chris? We're all adults here, right?
Yeah, sure. I'll put a disclaimer on the
okay
on the video.
I'll say freaking anyway. I'll just fine. I don't want to insult anybody's sensibilities, but yeah. So it's like, all right, well, now I knew it could take place there. Oh yeah. So these people, so there's tons of videos on YouTube. People were very proud of this opening up. This was a major deal. Tons of jobs, big industry moving in. GM moves in, like and you know, it's awesome. So that's right outside of Nairobi City. Big deal. So, and that was nice too, because it was close to Nairobi City, but it wasn't in the city. So it was a little bit removed from where the vampires were. It's just literally perfect. I was so happy. And so I got to see all these videos, people showing off all these machines that I knew nothing about before, and the way everything looks, and how high the ceilings are, and where the ground has painted lines, and like all this stuff. So that was all stuff that I got to work into the book to make that particular section feel as real as possible. And then I was like, well, all right, so what do I have here? I have buses. They're a big manufacturer of buses. So I was able to use the buses. I said, well, even though, maybe it doesn't make any sense, but who cares? Like, this is a book about vampires. Let's try to make it real, but not as, not worry about it too much. And so I sort of had the humans figure out a way to make a wall of buses that goes all the way around the plant. And protects them and whatever. And they're reinforcing the thing and cannibalizing all the material from the buses and doing all this stuff. And so that was a really fun thing. I got to, that was discovered along the way. That was like on the journey, had no plan to do that. I knew I wanted something. I knew I wanted it to be real. But as far as, specific things, it's like, well, I just kind of looked, I just researched what was there. I knew I figured out the area first. And my third book my third Predator World book that I'm going to be writing next is very much the same thing I've already started doing. And part of it is going to take place in Tanzania, and part of it takes place in the Ukraine. So it's me learning about the Ukraine and what's there, what's and figuring out where to set it. And it's got to be geographically correct, and I need certain things, like maybe, just for an example, like maybe I need a mountain over here or a lake over here, and you just kind of figure out what's there, and then just look at people's vacation photos that are around there. You find like various touristy areas, and you just see pictures, and it was really fun. I literally loved doing it, and I was technically enriching my own self too. It's fun, like, oh, look at all the stuff I'm learning. I never would have bothered to read about or anything like that. So anyway, long-winded answer, Eric.
No, that's good, because I read the first one. Let me rephrase that. Most of the first one. I haven't finished it yet, but what I did read, it was great. But the first image really that I got in my head was, as far as definitely post-apocalyptic, but kind of Mad Max or the Road Warrior, and kind of I Am Legend. So you just have sort of all this abandoned areas, but then you're saying they're building up all this around, so it really sounds more like a Mad Max, or I should say the Road Warrior, the second one, where he's goes into that encampment there.
Thunderdome.
Yeah,
Bartertown.
Even
that's the third one. That's the third one.
That's the third one.
Yeah. Right.
So did you get an idea from kind of like that, or would you put it a little different?
Yeah, no, I mean, as far as building that world, I mean, I do think that there is that Mad Max sort of quality, because it's like on the road. Like, both of those books are road books. They are trying to get from point A to point B. The reasons are different between the two books, and the locations are different, and the characters are different, but that felt right, because it's like, well, that's what I established with the first one. I want to do that again. And so it really is just moving. And I think not having a home base, not having a home, sort of lends it to that Mad Max feeling, where he's just kind of moving through this messed up landscape. I almost said fucked up. I had to pull back on that, because I didn't want to swear. Oops. But yeah, definitely that kind of vibe for sure.
You mentioned too that you mentioned that you like the Pulp Fiction of the past. What about more modern day Pulp Fiction? Because you had mentioned the one shot gun in the WITCHWYRM book. Any sort of like reference to, I don't know, something like Firefly?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I love Firefly. I love anything that's mixing Western with anything. Mostly horror is my favorite, but sci-fi Westerns definitely are awesome. Also, I mean, I really like the Powder Mage books by Brian McClellan. I think that was definitely an influence for sure. You know, he sort of has this Revolutionary War side to his fantasy, and it's very obvious. You know, it's everywhere. It's very Revolutionary War, and he has all these weird magical things going on too. But I did like that idea, and I just pulled it back basically all the way, except I said, well, it's okay, because at some point, you know, in our reality, you know, guns became a thing. Iron Age, Bronze Age, and I don't know, I guess the Iron Age. But yeah. I felt like, well, maybe that sort of same progression could happen there, and it was just at the cusp of that. But I liked, there is something about that. I also almost had like this ancient, like, you know, very Tolkien-esque city. There's this Tolkien-esque city in it, and I almost installed what you call it, gas lights, like gaslighting throughout the literal gaslighting,
Right.
when there was actual lights powered by gas. And then I just took it out. I felt like that might have been the bridge too far. So, but the black powder pistol felt okay to me. So,
Have you ever thought about doing some sort of historical fiction, dark fantasy, something like I don't know, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter type thing?
I don't know. I haven't really considered that too much per se, but I mean, that is a fun book. It's a fun idea. I like high concept, and sometimes high concept takes over and is kind of the only thing there. I think that Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is a cool book. Better than the movie, that's for sure. But that is the worry with that kind of a thing. If and oftentimes when I come up with an idea that's a single kernel of an idea, and it would be a high concept, not necessarily, you know, historical fiction, but just when it's based on one single kernel of an idea, I have a lot of trouble figuring out what the story to that idea is. And it just sits in my notes, in my folders in the recesses of my Google Drive for years, until I have some sort of an idea, but where I'm like, okay, story, there we go. Because I don't know, sometimes, you know, just that kernel of an idea isn't quite enough. Can't always easily grow that.
You mentioned, of course, you like Bela Lugosi is one of your favorite movie actors. Just real quick, did you know that there's a Dracula um, graphic novel
Yes.
that just came out in November? The only official one that's allowed to use Bela Lugosi's likeness as
Yes.
Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have it, but it's on my Amazon list.
It's on our list too. It's on
Oh,
our
it's on
list.
your list.
Yep,
So
keep
guys,
track
if
when
you're interested in the
get it.
Bela Lugosi comic book for the likeness of Bela in Dracula, you pick that up at a Free Thinker's Corner. That's what you do.
Yeah, we can order it, or even yet, if you want, bookshop.org. So this is our shameless plug for the evening. Well, actually, one of them. I'll have another one later when we get to the audiobook thing. But bookshop.org, we're partnered with them. Anything sales through them, we get a cut of. So you can definitely order it because it's available now. It's just Dracula, the graphic novel. I'm pretty sure that's the title. But so you mentioned xenomorphs. You know, of course, xenomorphs are more about aliens and stuff. But would you consider your vampires in the predator world as xenomorphs?
I mean, sort of in the literal sense, they sort of are, because they do change. They do go through a metamorphosis, and they are, you know, pretty alien to our current reality. So I guess literally, yeah, kind of. There are like your kind of normal vampires where you kind of look like a person still, and then they undergo a metamorphosis. If they don't get enough to eat, the body starts to freak out and starts to change into something that can better feed itself, which is you know, even less dateable than it was before. I mean, these are not sparkly pretty vampires. That's all I'm saying. I mean, you know.
Eric says there's a Dracula book by Alex de Campi. It's beautiful and far too short, so I'll have to check out
Nice.
that one too. So you got your start with doing short stories, which are in a bunch of anthologies, and you had mentioned that you wanted to maybe read one of your short stories. This would be a great time if you want to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna probably have to scuttle chapter 1, 2 for WITCHWYRM, but that's okay because you guys can. I mean, you guys can buy the book. It's fine. Like, don't feel bad if you feel like you wanna. I mean, like, I won't mind. I won't mind. But so got very cool. So I will say this: very cool thing about being a horror author is that all the horror comes out in pretty much in October. So especially anthologies, because everybody loves to do that. That's the fun thing to do. So I had 3 anthology appearances within, basically they all came out the same week. Pretty funny. One was like a week later. But the most exciting one for me by far, I will mention last. First I was in More Lore from the Mythos 2. I have the first one. I don't have the second one physically, but I was also in the first one. It's a Lovecraftian anthology, and you can pick this up anywhere fine books are sold. This was put out by Fractured Mind Publishing, and just Lovecraftian-esque. Nothing too on the nose. Certainly mine is not very on the nose. I more played with the idea of insanity more than anything else with mine. I have a story in here called What Grows Beneath, about some gardening that just goes so wrong. I mean, just so terribly wrong. So More Lore from the Mythos 2 came out this October. The first one came out last year. That came out. I have a book called I'm in a book called VHS Nightmares. Really fun. The first book from a new Worcester-based publisher called Danger Meows, not Danger Mouse, but Danger Meows Publishing. And it is, the idea with that book is it's supposed to be like the seedy VHS horror movies that you sort of never heard of until you are at the back end of like where all the cobwebs are still in, in the 80s when you'd be sifting through all the horror section of your local video village or whatever. And before Blockbuster even came to town, I'm talking like this is like the good old days. And so I have a story in that called Monster Financing Available, which is a pretty fun story about a terrible about there's a lake monster. There's a lake monster. Also, Tom Didi dies in it. So if you know Tom Didi and you want to see him die, I mean, I don't want to see him die in real life, but he dies in this story. So anyway, so there's that. And also I have I'm most excited to be in this book called Slay, Tales of the Vampire Noir. And this is a book that I heard about, actually, my buddy Paul McNamee, who is in here. Hey, Paul, how's it going, man? Thanks for stopping by. Was basically like, hey, check this out, man. This book has your number. You should submit something. And I was like, oh my God, I do need to do this thing. So it's basically African vampires, black vampires, just all sorts of stories in there. There's literally runs the gamut, because that's what's great about vampires, right? I mean, you can have your scary brand, you can have your romantic brand, you can have all these different types, and this really has it all. And they separate it. What's really cool is
Although
they separate it by.
Although you can't have your sparkly vampires. That's where I draw the line.
I don't think that there are any sparkling like exactly. There's some hot ones though. There's some bangable vampires in Slay. You wouldn't want to bang the vampires in my story, because my story actually is a tie into my Predator World books. So it's actually the first time I've ever gotten to do that. It just felt right. So, but the neat thing is they actually separate the stories by continent. So this was edited by this awesome lady, Nicole Givens Kurtz. And she's an awesome author and has just done tons of stuff. Really, really great lady. But so like the table of contents is really fun, because it's like, okay, United States and Britain, and there's a bunch of stories. Then it's Africa. Then it's the future. So there's like, okay, well, There was a bunch that I guess took place in the future, so we'll put them all there. Very, very fun. Very incredibly happy to be part of this book. So I will read you guys some of my story, or maybe all the story. Let's see. So my story. Let me get. I was on the page, and then I wanted to tell you guys about the super cool table of contents. So now I'm not on the page anymore. Hold on a second here. Okay. It's fascinating. I know this is really good. This is a A+ level podcasting here. Okay. So if you guys are ready, I'll read some of my Slay story, which is called No God But Hunger. How many years had it been? Remembering is harder, but memories, however faded or fractured, are all we have. They've taken everything else, everything real. Blood drinkers, vampires, sasabonsam. When he was still alive, my uncle called them the matsatsaku maza, the leech men. What they really were was an end, the end, and a beginning that no one asked for. As the plague spread, so did things like panic, chaos, and finally a long silence, because after that, the only flies left on Earth's carcass were the ones who had learned a very hard lesson. Those little bugs knew better than to beat their tiny buzzing wings. In other words, if what remained of mankind wanted to survive, he was going to have to crawl. I can still remember that last night with Nico. In fact, if I concentrate hard enough, I can even smell the air, sweet and a little spoiled, like compost under a hot Tanzanian sun, like meat that's gone to the worms. 25. That's it. As of that night, it had been 25 years since the world went red, right before my world ended for the third time. For hours, we moved across the Serengeti, checking every tree along the way. Carefully, systematically, always keeping one eye on the sun and its slow but steady descent. Though I did not yet regret my decision to go after the leopard, I was growing increasingly anxious. At my suggestion, further measures were added to our costumes. The acacia tree's yellow sap smells a bit like bee honey, but it adds to the unappetizing qualities of our bouquet. We applied it in dots and lines to our faces and anywhere skin was showing, and then we kept going. I worried that Nico had lost the trail, but then there would be something, a print, some disturbed brush, or most encouraging of all, the lines in the dirt that told us that the animal was still dragging whatever it had killed. In the dying light, we saw something far more disturbing than the sky's colors, signs of civilization. What do you think it is? I narrowed my eyes at the collection of metal poles sticking straight up out of the ground. There must be 20 or more. I think, Nico said thoughtfully, it's a camp. Or at least it was. For a second, I remained confused, but then it clicked. Ah, I nodded. The canvas roofs are probably long gone. I see now. Those are the naked poles of some kind of campsite. Maybe. Nico didn't sound terribly interested. Or one of those open-air lodges? All the way out here for that authentic safari experience? My fingers loosened around my sharpened oar. Civilization was a dangerous thing. Over the last 25 years, even the most meager of structures had been claimed. 4 walls, a roof, something to block out the windows. Little more was required to escape the deadly rays of their great nemesis. In Predator World, the sun shone as brightly as ever, but the matsatsaku maza never saw it. For as Nico had said, by that particular point in history, the cities belonged to them. Well, I said with a sigh of relief, whatever that is or was, it doesn't look like a place for leeches. Nor for leopards, it would seem. Nico eyed the ground. But they moved. Nico's eyes went to the ground, but they moved to the distance, past the old campsite, into a large acacia, maybe a kilometer away. Do you see that pot in the grass? There, right there. I peered through the eye slits of my mask. That's the one, he said with a hint of excitement. But we've passed so many trees. Why would this leopard come so far? To my surprise, Nico said nothing, at least at first. Home is where we make it, my China. He smiled, showing that I was not the only one wearing a cracked mask. Just look how far we have come, you and I. He turned to inspect the swath of land behind us, not west, but south. Nico, I placed a hand on his shoulder, glanced down at the man slightly shorter than myself. It's 6:21. The sun will be down in less than 30 minutes. If that's our tree, I would like to finish this. After a few silent moments, he said, yes, the lizard who considers the road for too long may get paved over before ever taking a step. If you say so, I shook my head. Making sure to stay low to the ground, the two of us set off, moving as quickly as possible. As we came to the big acacia, our pace slowed. The branches were high. The lowest had to be 15 meters from the ground, but there was no sign of any leopard. This is it, Nico whispered. Check out the bark. I didn't know what he was talking about. The sun was almost set and we were still moving. I see a tree. Is that all? Even whispering, there was an insidious smile in Nico's voice. Yes, damn it, I stopped talking, moving, everything but searching. I reached out to the acacia's trunk, the acacia trunk's irregular surface, and that's when I noticed that portions of it had been clawed away. I turned to Nico, then gazed up at the branches. I couldn't see, hear, or smell the beast, but by God, I knew it was up there. The best way to catch a leopard is to find where it lives. If it's not home, just climb up and wait. I guarantee you will be the last thing it will expect to find in its parlor. Yeah? I stared up into the dark canopy shadows. And what if it is home? Well, Nico took out a length of rope from his pack. With one hand, he swung it around the trunk, catching the end with his other. Then you are most definitely going to piss it off. He flipped the rope a bit more up the trunk. In that case, it is best to have someone on the ground with strong arms, because they may very well need to catch you. Can you do me one favor? I asked. Can that one be the last proverb of the day? What proverb? I'm being completely literal. Nico pulled himself a bit higher up the tree before digging his heels in and repeating the process. Just hold on to that oar, and if something falls that isn't me, I want you to hit it on the head a lot. Okay. Don't worry about me. Just pay attention to what you're... A low noise drifted down from above. A warning. A growl wrapped in a hiss. It stopped my mouth from flapping, my heart from beating. And though it felt as if I were moving in slow motion, I inclined my head up, once more into the acacia's pitch-dark shadows, just in time to see two yellow eyes. I raised my weapon, just not fast enough. The leopard pounced. Nico had been right about one thing at least. The animal was undeniably pissed off. The initial impact felt more like someone had dropped a water buffalo on the man, on me, than a 30-kilo cat. I lifted my weapon, but the force was too much, and I felt the thing snap. After that, the world was replaced with horrible yellow teeth. My hand gripped what had once been a canoe oar, and I braced myself for the inevitable, for the vice-like pressure of the leopard's kiss upon my throat. I think it was then that I began to feel that we had made the wrong decision, gone the wrong way. We could have gone home, could have been safe. Safe? In that moment, I realized that the hot breath in my nostrils was not my own. I remembered this was bullshit. There was no such thing as safe. In Predator World, there was only this, that which had replaced God. The only question was, who was hungrier, the cat or the crazy bitch in the elephant mask? My face shot forward, resulting in an impact that registered as a flash behind my eyes. I had smashed the leopard right in the mouth, causing it to rear back just enough. Needing to capitalize, my right hand stabbed down, still gripping wood. The thrust was all and everything I had. But it wasn't enough to puncture the leopard's hide, but the gasping shriek as I stabbed that broken piece of ore into its throat was music. It told me that I had hurt the thing. I tried to roll away, but a large paw came down on my chest and slammed me back to the ground. Then powerful legs were all around, as a spotted hide became the sky. I remember screaming, beating the heavy thing on top of me with alternating pieces of broken ore, wanting to deal out more pain, but even my strongest hits were glancing, feeble things. I was weak and pathetic, and worst of all, I was going to die looking like a damned fool. Nico's grass could do nothing to protect me from anything as natural as a leopard. Get off! Get off! I roared in impotent outrage, thoroughly underwhelmed with what might be my final words. The teeth had returned, curved and long and yellow, and past them radiated the heat of 1,000 suns. But the thing's reeking breath was like smelling salts, stealing my waning nerve. I fought and I pushed, and I continued to scream, dreading more than anything that inevitable moment when the cat's claws would find my flesh, and though uninvited, would proceed to enter me. Ha! The impact came from the side. The metal head of the garden hoe was jabbed so hard into the cat's side, I heard a dull cracking. I tried to see what was happening, but everything swam. With a sharp inhalation, I scrambled to my feet. I am losing my voice, you guys, in real time. I scrambled to my feet. And though I knew Nico was battling for his life and mine, something in me went soft. Both of my hands opened, letting the two halves of ore fall and bounce off the ground. My hands flew over my body and then searched for new openings, finding none. And as I stood there, hugging myself, wanting to weep out of rage and violation, I felt the pain of a very old scar. Unable to stop myself, one hand began to travel behind my shoulder, suddenly needing to touch, to feel the raised skin of the letters that had been carved there. Morella! The sound of my name pulled me back to the moment. We have to be quick! End this now! I beheld the scene with wide, startled eyes. Nico and the leopard were facing each other, the cat, snarling, baring its long teeth in considerable fury. Nico had switched to the other end of his garden hoe, the vampire-killing end, sharpened to a long point in the fashion of my late ore. This was a shocking thing to see. After all, it was Nico who loved reminding me that a smart kill was one with no blood spilled, because that was the safe play. The reason he had always chose to brain animals with the dull metal end of that hoe, because blood brings blood. If it runs out there, we can't track it till morning. I gazed out across the savannah, which was now almost completely dark. We have to get in front of it, I began shakily. Put the tree to its back. Out of my left foot, out of my left boot, I retrieved the kitchen knife I had put there. She didn't put it in her foot, she put it in her boot. Then the two of us began sidestepping until the animal we had tracked for so many hours had nowhere to go. In the moonlight, its eyes flashed as yellow as its teeth, but with unholy light. It startled, it snarled and spat, and then it stopped. The change that came over the leopard was instantaneous. Lips fell, ears shot straight back, lying flat against the skull. The animal's boundless rage was inexplicably gone, replaced by what I could only describe as fear. Fear, yes, but not for us. As I peered again into those darkened plains, I saw the leopard was staring straight at the site we had passed, that collection of poles that stuck straight up in the air, which had once been a camp or lodge, but could not possibly offer shelter for something like the matsatsaku maza. At first, the noises were distant, a faint, high-pitched snarling that I recognized at once. Then the grass between us and the vertical poles began to rustle. Whatever was coming was moving fast and low to the ground. Morella! I heard my name distantly, as if in a dream. Take this! The leopard was forgotten, as was the knife in my hand. In that moment, all I could do was stare at the unseen death rustling through the grass, coming straight for us. Damn it, woman! That time, Nico's voice came with a physical component. The handle of his garden hoe pressed into me, lengthwise across my chest. I can't do this alone! Finally, I turned to him, to my partner, my friend, the first I'd made in a long time, and then I pushed the garden implement back towards him. You don't have to. I kneeled to pick up a piece of broken ore from the ground. The movement caused the leopard to hiss at me before scrambling out and away, disappearing into the dark savannah. Shit, I said with a sneer. Forget the cat, Nico said. Nico had his battle hoe up and ready. We'll find it again, carry its carcass back to Jua, and then eat like kings and queens. From behind my mask, I grinned. As long as we live through the next few minutes, you mean? Minutes, Nico smiled. Think we will last so long? Maybe, I said without meaning to. The set of weapons felt strange and wrong, but I had survived with less. Still, I couldn't stop wondering if I should lead with the kitchen knife or the broken piece of wood. But after another second passed, the grass parted and I had something else to think about. The matsatsaku maza were utterly hairless, their skin a perfect pitch black, but this only served to accentuate certain other features: the white teeth, the talon-like nails, and those hideous eyes, solid red like whole cherries. All these things flashed, but Nico and I stood our ground. For with their emergence came a small measure of relief. These four were the small kind, the sort of monster that still approximated the size and shape of men, or in this case, children. If I had to guess, none of them had been more than 15 when they last felt the sun on their backs. And though I knew they were all far older than they appeared, it was difficult to trick my eyes. I had faced others like them before, killed them too, but it had never been easy. Get the cat! I realized that the pack's alpha was a girl. She spoke Swahili, but never more than a few words at a go. Though I wasn't fluent, I managed to keep up. Take it home, she hissed. We follow! Something like that. I watched as two broke from the rest and vanished into the outer dark. Right then I felt a great swell of outrage in my chest. They were going after the leopard. Our fucking leopard. I knew that a single bite was all it would take to spoil the meat, and that thought at that particular moment made me very angry. No, angry isn't the word. We had to make this quick, to live through the next few seconds, but we also had to get that leopard. My arm muscles brimmed with frustrated potential energies, and when the moment finally came, my body shot forward, straight past Nico, straight for the alpha. As I rushed, she stood there unconcerned, as if an errant breeze was coming her way instead of a thoroughly pissed off Ugandan. I think I heard my name, but it was too late for thought, too late for anything to stop the knife already thrusting down. Even so, the little bitch didn't move. I can still feel her eyes and that ever-widening piranha smile searing into my retinas. Right then, I didn't know what was making her so damned confident, but I learned. 3 more appeared from the grass, hitting me in the side like a careening truck, adding their weight to the 2 already standing by her side as they slammed me to the ground. Even a single young leech is a dangerous thing, and right then, I had a dog pile of 5 to contend with. In frustration, more than anything, I screamed obscenities in their faces, for there I was again, on my back, struggling in vain, helpless, and waiting for the end. I could feel them gripping my arms and legs and neck, reaching down with little hooked fingers, giggling their insidious liquid giggles. Les enfants infernaux. That was the phrase that popped into my mind as I lay buried, something my mother might have said. Little shits, the voice of Nico Bromson roared, cutting through the ravening hiss like a choir of fucking angels. You get off her! One shrieked, leaving my ears ringing. There was a surge in the crushing weight, and then some much-needed relief, as 2 from the pile were pulled away. I gasped to regain some of my lost air, and then turned to my right. Nico's homemade spear had gone all the way through the first one's heart and into the ribs of the second. That was the one who had shrieked in my ear, and it was shrieking still. The 3 still on top of me were distracted. Seizing the moment, I thrust my knife forward, plunging it directly into one of their chests. Then I reached out and pulled the screaming thing toward me, squeezing until I saw the point of the blade stick out of its back. As it happens, the stories did get a few things right. Sun burns, garlic repels, and the heart is always the spot you aim for. Thing is, the killing blow can be dealt with a consecrated stake of white oak, a kitchen knife, or pretty much anything else as long as it goes all the way through. The leech slumped down, covering me like a shroud. It was dead. I had killed something that looked a lot like a child, but I couldn't think of it like that. Had to remind my eyes that they were lying, that however this creature appeared, like its brothers and sisters, it was a predator, and worse, our competition. With a great roar of effort, I freed myself and got back on my feet. Adrenaline coursing, I spun on my heel to swing the piece of wood in my hand. The broken oar whistled, and then it smashed one of those goddamn leech kids square in the jaw. The leader's gone! From the sound of Nico's voice, I could tell he was actively fighting. She's going back to the camp, or whatever the hell it used to be. Nico finished off the one he was fighting, and I turned to the one I had hit. It was rubbing its jaw and appeared to be afraid, or at the very least, uncertain. It was a boy, or at least had been, maybe 8 or 9 when turned. I think she sent the others after the leopard, I shouted, without taking my eyes off the boy that wasn't. As Alpha, they might wait for her to eat first, but our leopard will be torn apart in seconds. We can't let that happen. I wholeheartedly agree. Out of breath, Nico stepped to my side. United, we stared down the last of them, the Les Enfants Inferno, watching as those solid red eyes flitted between us and the dark unknown. It reminded me it reminded me of a little bird that wanted to fly. Despite everything I knew, everything I had seen and done to survive since the world went red, right then there was only one thing I wanted. Fly, little bird. Fly away and don't turn back. It's funny the bits that come back and the ones that never do. When I try, I cannot summon the name of my first professor or the way my mother smelled when she gave me that last hug before bed. But after Nico and I killed the last of those baby leeches, when we were running straight for those poles, I remember the wind, how cool it felt on my hot, blood-spattered skin. Once we reached the poles, it was clear that Nico had been right. The site had been one of those open-air lodges, complete with the skeletons of 8 tents that had surely once catered to a special breed of tourist. Between the poles, there were piles of various things I could not identify. I moved in closer and saw that all manner of things had been used. Some items, like little broken chairs and other furniture, had probably been part of the lodge. Others looked to be personal belongings, packs and clothes, even things that might be used as weapons. Then there were the bones, animal and human alike, thousands of them, gleaming in the light of the moon, collected by Earth's newest apex and placed in tribute to that which had replaced their god. Maybe there's something here we can use. I approached a long wooden pole sticking out of a pile. I had lost my knife in the last tussle and only had the broken oar to defend myself with. Do you see her? No. Nico circled the naked tents, checking to make sure the alpha wasn't hiding behind. This makes no sense. I pulled on the pole, hoping for something the length of a quarterstaff I could whittle into a point. Leeches need 4 walls, a roof, and even then, they block out the windows. I pulled again, harder this time. How can there be a nest here? There is nowhere to hide. I don't know, but I have heard stories of leechmen doing some very strange things. Having checked the last of the roofless tents, Nico leaned on his garden hoe. There was a man I knew in Mozambique, Raoul. He claimed to have come upon one of them just as the sun was about to rise. It was lying there, dead, he assumed, but only until it turned its head, locking its soulless cherry eyes with his. And so Raoul just stood there, too afraid to do anything but wait for the rosy fingers of dawn to turn the damned thing to ash. I stopped what I was doing then, just listening as Nico went on. Eventually, he said, the leech just put its head back down, right in the dirt. Then, just as the sun's light was about to reach it, something happened, something that my friend Raoul could never explain. The dirt reached up, he said, made the monster a part of itself. The dirt, I repeated the word, unconvinced. Reached? It's how Raoul described it, Nico said, as if the earth itself were trying to shield that leech from the sun, protecting it in a kind of cocoon. Huh, I said. Sounds like Raoul didn't have both his oars in the water. Nico snickered. Maybe so, but as we both know, just because something has never been seen before does not mean it isn't happening. I relinquished a nod. My mind drifted back to those early news reports, to the rampant jokes, tweets, and the posts that made believing the impossible even harder. Dirt cocoons, I said, knowing that I had no right or reason to disbelieve a damn thing. You really think that's happening here? Me? Nico poked at an overturned chair with the toe of his boot. Heck, I'm just making conversation. With a sigh, my hands returned to the wooden pole. Excuse me. Returned to the wooden pole, gripping as tight as they could. Then, mustering one final pull, the thing came loose. Unable to stop myself, I stumbled back. My heart raced as I inspected my hard-won prize. The tip of the spear was solid steel, maybe 35 centimeters long, sturdy, relatively free of rust. I thrust the weapon forward in the air, once and again. Yeah, I said, this will do. Just then, my foot stepped on something that wasn't earth. Glancing downward, I moved my foot in an arc, sweeping some of the dirt away. Nico, check this out. There are boards here. I think it's a deck or some kind of patio. Though the light was low, once we knew what to look for, the repeating parallel lines were hard to miss. The boards had been set directly into the ground. My eyes followed them around two of the tents. Then I saw it. The ultimate amenity one insists upon while booking an authentic trip to adventure. I'll be damned. Nico's voice dripped with disdain as much as wonder. It's a pool. Of course. What else? I said with a snicker. You can't get that authentic safari experience without a swimming pool. With practiced caution, I approached the edge of the deep rectangular hole and glared down. The old pool was lined with concrete and tile, but it held no water. Only what appeared to be a number of huge crumpled tarps. Dirt cocoons, huh? I said with far too much sarcasm. More like the roofs of all those tents. Still, that must have taken some real ingenuity, finding this place and seeing a potential home. Home. His tone had a distant, thinking out loud quality. Home is where you make it, where you take your bread and break it. I don't think these kids are living on bread, Nico. He laughed then, but it was thin, automatic, and mirthless. The eyes of the old Sappho were pointing past the pool at the coming pair of pitch black forms rushing towards us. One of them had something over its shoulder, something tawny and covered in spots. At that moment, I cursed in Hausa. Can't remember what I said exactly, but I'm sure it was colorful. The pair who had been sent after the leopard were returning to discover that they had a couple of uninvited guests in their parlor. At a distance of perhaps 10 meters, I could see the two leeches had only 3 eyes between them. Suddenly, the one I've come to think of as Tall Boy hurled his prize. The limp body of the leopard, sliding in the dirt, rolling until it came to a stop by one of the tent poles. It was dark, and I only spared a second's glance, but right then, I couldn't tell if the animal was dead or simply stunned. The shorter of the two was missing an eye. It was the first to lunge, and it was the first to be cut down. First, Nico delivered a hard jab with the flat of his garden hose head. Then he pivoted, swinging with centrifugal force, burying the edge into the meat of one eye's right side. It screamed, and then it didn't. Though I had seldom seen him use it, the edge of Nico's trusty hoe had been sharpened to a razor. After pulling back the weapon, Nico lashed out again with that sharpened edge, separating the still wailing head of one eye from its post. Preoccupied as he was, Nico couldn't see the attack coming from behind. Didn't know that his actions had sent Tall Boy charging with outstretched arms that seemed too long on its frame. Fortunately, that old Safa had Marela Nanji for his partner, a girl who once upon a time had chosen javelin over table tennis as her sport of choice. It had been years since I'd thrown, but I didn't waste time remembering how. My arm, my eye, they all remembered how to aim. They remembered how to aim. My hand knew just when to release. The spear whistled as it flew, and then it didn't. And though my strike missed the heart, it gave Nico ample time to spin around and thrust with the stake end of his weapon, finishing the lanky, slathering tall boy off in one well-placed hit. Nico and I regarded each other. Both of us were out of breath and covered in blood that was not our own. For a second, I thought we were done, that we had made it through. But there was something pulling at my attention, a rustling sound drawing my eyes down into the deep rectangular hole in the ground, to the crumpled mass of tarps, which I could now tell were moving. My heart skipped, my fingers desperately clutching for the weapon I had already thrown. Marela! I pivoted around to see that my spear was already flying through the air. Instinct took over. My hand reached out, seized the moving shaft in mid-flight. I turned then, but the spear and the arm wielding it were promptly pinned in a position that denied leverage. The alpha leech had leapt out of the pool and was on me, above me, everywhere. Its legs wrapped around and under my belly, arms squeezing, forcing the air from my lungs. Though it weighed very little, the strength of that damn little leech was enormous. With every step, I stumbled backward. Its gaping mouth moved closer. I remember the teeth, how whitely they had gleamed in the moonlight, how perfect, like slivers of solid pearl. One hand shot free, and without a second's hesitation, I drove a thumb deep into the left eye of my attacker. There came a shriek and an incredible relief of pressure. Finally, with the damn thing off me, I could breathe. I lashed out with the spear, the new extension of myself. It was my new set of claws, my rage. My first strike went through its throat. The child-shaped thing I could find no pity for. The alpha seemed dazed. Its remaining eye, wide and red with surprise, had the strangest sensation. I had the strangest sensation that it wanted to speak, or maybe just beg. Maybe. Before it could do any of that, though, I pulled the spear out and shoved it right through the thing's heart. I remember how I felt then, breathing, standing there amidst those naked tents and bones and piles of collected treasure with the inky blood of the alpha on my skin. I lifted the Babanki mask and I swept my eyes over the camp. Then I turned to my friend. Nico was tired and maybe older than either he or I liked to admit. Like he had done so many times before, the old Safa offered me a smile, and though I did not return it, I did allow myself to feel triumphant, to believe that for one damn second we were safe. But safe was an outdated concept. Had been for 25 years. Les enfants infernaux may have been all dead, but I had forgotten about the leopard. It all happened so fast. First I saw movement in the shadows, then a flash of color. I cannot say when the animal had awakened, only that it did not waste the quiet moment. The attack was well planned, well timed. The leopard struck fast, sinking its teeth into Nico Bromson's throat. I wanted to scream and to vomit, to lash out with my spear, to rip the spotted devil apart with my bare hands. By God, I wanted to do all of it. But I didn't. Couldn't. I was frozen, bewitched by those yellow eyes. The very same I saw up in the shadowy branches of an old acacia tree. So I watched, gaping in horror as my friend was dragged away, as the animal we had tracked for almost a day pulled at his already limp form and then began to run, disappearing into the grass in the long, merciless hours of night. Remembering is hard, but it is also important. However painful, I remember that last night with Nico as if it were yesterday. In fact, if I concentrate hard enough, I can even smell the air, sweet and a little spoiled, like compost under a hot Tanzanian sun, like meat that's gone to the worms. It reminds me of how much we've lost, of how much has been sacrificed at the altar to the only God this world worships. For me, that night was far from over. Once the leopard was out of sight, control of my body returned to a woman who was utterly shattered, but who was also filled with enough rage to fill a mountain. Revenge was all I wanted. I needed it, hungered for it. And so, after consulting my plastic yellow watch, I reached up to the mask again, that old slab of wood, shaped long ago by the Babanki into something fierce, something with curved tusks, a painted trunk, and ugly vertical eyes. Like I did whenever I needed to become something other than myself, I slid the mask down, hiding the woman, becoming the beast once again. That's it. The end.
You mentioned that you're doing your own. What's that?
I have no voice at all. Hey, Penelope Flynn, woo!
So you do your own. You're doing your own audiobook for Mark of the Witchworm.
Yes.
What's that process? Well, do you do voices for each of the characters like you did reading this?
I wouldn't call that much of a voice. I would say that that was about Halle Berry in the first X-Men. Like I had an African accent for about 2 seconds, and then it just went away. But in the audiobook for Witchworm, I stay pretty close to it. I'm really working on the performances themselves, and not reading one thing for half an hour makes it easier to kind of like, you're doing it in chunks, and and I'll listen to it and I'll be like, oh no, that's not right. I fell out of the accent there, but I do enjoy doing accents. It's pretty fun. But in WITCHWYRM, I do actually had to really work on a German accent, which is just very staccato. I learned a lot about, like, I was watching like YouTube videos on what makes a German accent, because like, I just think like the Germans, Tommy, the Germans. It's like I didn't want to like throw all my Z's in there. I thought that was a bit silly, and they don't always do that. I mean, that's more of a cartoon impression, really. But it was fun. A lot of staccato talking. So like, if I were to, no, see, I go into French. That's the problem. I go into French, and I had to say that one French thing in this. So now my brain's like screwed up. I can't do it. I'm not even going to try to do it. Forget it. But yeah, no, it's good stuff. Fun.
Where do you do the recording? Do you have your own recording studio, or do you go somewhere to do it?
I just do everything. I do everything sitting in this chair. Actually, oh my God, me and this chair, we are so well acquainted. I'll tell you what.
So is that where you also did the recording for your group?
Yeah. I have this extra space in my house. We have kind of a very separate space, and it just has worked out and been a very very multi-use sort of space. And sometimes we'll come in here and just watch movies, just to like get out of the living room too, and it's kind of fun. Been actually kind of nice having that for COVID. But so yeah, we do everything here. Call it Raven Soul Studios. It's kind of the name we always had for it, like back in the day, and just kind of kept it. But we produce everything here with kind of minimal equipment, really. A lot of like audio quality you can do a lot in post. Like 90% of making audio sound good is just EQ. It's amazing what you can do with EQ, and like just a few other things, but like EQ is like 90%. You could take any podcast and just mess with it a little bit. That's why, like, you can just mess with your car EQ, and it's like, oh, sounds a million times better. It's amazing. But if you do that like on my end, and then it goes out that way, and it's already, the EQ is already nice and everything. But we do other stuff too. It's not just EQ, but that is actually, it's funny. It's like actually a pretty big part of it.
You say we, is that you and your wife, or
well, me and the guys, the band. I say like I produced everything. Everything is in my house. I do most of the actual physical stuff, but a lot of like recording for the band was always a group effort. So every little tweak was, everybody's always here, and we're all kind of making decisions together. And I was just sort of the one actually turning the quote unquote knobs. And then so doing that sort of allowed us to learn so much that it led to the podcast, and now it's led to an audiobook. So it's just stuff that we've kind of done over the years, and gotten a little bit better at as we went, and it's fun. I enjoy producing audio. It's fun. Reading 100,000 words is not fun, but it was a heck of an experience. So I'm glad we, now the we is me and Rough House Publishing. I'm glad we decided to go with that, and have me produce it instead of hiring somebody or whatever. It's like, well, it's always fun hearing the author read their own stuff anyway, right? Like I love that. So I love it.
We have one author. We have one author who in the store. We actually started when we started doing these author series way back in what it was, August or July. Alana Mugden, and her books are all young adult dragons, but she does her own podcast, or not podcast, audiobook as well, and she does all different voices for all the characters and everything, and she produces everything
Yeah.
herself. Do
Awesome.
you have somebody with you to help you with that, or are you strictly just do it by yourself? And how do you chunk it up? Is it just sort of going uh, uh, until you're tired, and then you say, okay, we'll stop there and we'll do what you need to fine tune it? Or do you say, okay, I'm going to read this section, then go and fine tune it? Or do you do sections at a time and then go all the way back and just finish it off?
So again, learning experience. What I've learned is that my voice sounds better in the earlier half of the day than in the later half of the day. Like right now, I'm like really losing my voice. If I got to this point and I was recording, I would stop, because there's literally no point. You're going to hear the stress in my voice in the recording forever, so there's just no reason to do that. But if on the weekends, I try to get in here like 10 o'clock. If I can get in here at 10 o'clock, I can sit down and record for 3 hours and maybe get like 30 pages done or something like that. And that's a really pretty good chunk. So I've just, it's taken me a couple months, but I'm literally doing it in my spare time. So I've learned that produces, I'm able to make less mistakes. The quality of my voice is better. I have more energy. I'm, just all the things are better. Rather than if I force myself to do it at night. Now I have a daughter who is young, she's going to be 12 next week. So she's growing up, but she's still, a little kid. But, so I like, I want to hang out with my kid. I love my kid. Like, so like, what I was doing was, I'll hang out with her until it's time for her to go to bed, which is like 8:30. And then she can, she gets her extra half hour in her room, whatever, but like 8:30, go to bed. Okay, cool. And so I would come in here like 8:30. And I was finding that sometimes I would only get like 5 pages done, and I'd be in here for 2 hours because I'm literally fighting through everything.
We lost you there for a second. All right. Well, Steve seems to have frozen here for a second. As soon as we get that back, but everybody who is, we are losing.
What do you want? Like, So I've just sort of said, all right, enough with that. I gotta do it on the weekends.
That's cool. That's cool. So we're starting to lose people. It is getting kind of late. So we're going to kind of wrap things up, but
Awesome.
We do want to say we're looking forward to the audiobook coming out. Don't forget, Libro FM is where you want to. Now we know that it has to go on to that other platform that shall not be named, but Libro.fm is a great audiobook platform that, again, shares its profits with us for everything that's downloaded. Your wife uses it, which we really appreciate. So something to think about when you do it, and we'll definitely be able to plug you and plug that when it comes out. So, awesome. And as far as the rest of his books, again, Marrow Dust and Bone Eater King are available in Free Thinker's Corner. The other books like Slay and some of the other anthologies that Steve is in are available through bookshop.org, and of course, it's directly through Steve. Is there anything you'd like to finish off by saying?
If you guys are interested in Mark of the Witchworm, please go to roughhousepublishing.com. You can still pre-buy it. It does come out in January, towards the end of January. We are on track. Everything's looking good. The audiobook's going to be awesome, and it's going to be done. So, and if you want the physical copies, they're all there. So you can still get there is a limited edition hardcover that is limited. So I think that's limited to, I want to say 200 copies, but I'm not really sure. But there are some left and stuff. So if you're interested, please check out roughhousepublishing.com.
Yeah, and as soon as
follow
it's
me
available,
on Facebook. I'm not on the gram. I'm not that cool. But if you want to follow me on Facebook or on Twitter, look up Steve Van Samson. There's no P in my name. It is Samson, my friends.
Yep.
But follow me.
Yep.
Say hey.
And as soon as WITCHWYRM is available, we'll have that in store for us too, so you can get it through us as well, signed copies as well. And as far as his music goes, again, check out Enchanted Exile, the YouTube, SoundCloud. Somebody had mentioned earlier GeoCities. They listened to it through GeoCities. And again, you can listen to it directly on our website as well, and of course Steve's site. So thank you very much, Steve. We look forward to having you in person one of these days.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. When the world opens back up. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to checking out some. You got a great lineup left for Frightmare Before Christmas. Pretty cool. You got some Cat Scully, and you got some Haverhill Publishing folks. Chris Golden, John McElveen's coming. Pretty awesome.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, and y'all have a good night.